Hello everyone, welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman, every once in a while, we have a guest that either is so good or we are so long-winded that we have to bring back. And tonight, I think it's because Brian was so good. We brought Brian back. We had him. We told him we were going to put a pin in it. We brought him back, and we finished up a couple things that were left unsaid in our last conversation together. What jumped out at you tonight?
Well, hold on. So first of all, I'd like to toot our own horn a little bit, right? Like last time, we only handled one question.
That's true.
And I think tonight we get through maybe two or three of his questions, but Brian brings some pretty powerful thoughts of his own. And then he brings some questions that are just like smack dab what we are wrestling with right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so the relevancy and the application of the things that we talk about. And I think too, just in the process of the three of us engaging in those conversations, I think some dust settles on some things and we walk away with pretty clear ways to apply some of the principles that come up tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I what I loved about it was that, like you said, it was a good conversation, but I felt like throughout the conversation there were moments where there was like, this is what I do, this is what you do, this is what Brian does, and it really kind of gave me some new perspective on some things that I'm in the middle of. So I loved it, man.
Yeah, it is about it. It's always about that intentionality. But I mean, anytime we're dropping Stranger Things next to Sir Ken Robinson, right?
Yeah.
Next to a retired baseball player. I mean, it's a little bit of a quilt tonight.
Yeah, it really was. And but you know what's funny is, and we've had this happen so many times. We start out with an initial thought. We ramble down the road and maybe we're off in the weeds all over the place. And then somehow we end up back.
My favorite when Brian joins is like, whoa, you guys are kind of off the rails. And you're like, no, I think we're always.
Yeah, we're never really on the rails, but we end up back at that point at the beginning, and I think that tonight, the conversation about being intentional and making some choices about how we get ourselves in a good place and how we get ourselves out of those kind of negative spaces that we can find ourselves in was meaningful to me. And I felt like Brian really offered a lot of really great insight there.
Well, and scripts takes on a couple of meanings tonight, right? The scripts that we play in our minds, the scripts that we're using in our relationships with other folks, and maybe trying to get out of that rut, right? Get into actually connecting, step into a space of being curious. I love where he comes out firing back, right? We send him some things throughout the day, just like, hey, Brian, here's some of the thoughts we've got. He's like, I'll see your thoughts and I'll raise you a couple more. In that, just the powerful quote about, when we mess up, we're not bad, we're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I really
let that sink in for people, right?
Yeah.
When we mess up, we're not bad, we're wrong.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It's super powerful. And I think that if you're at all curious when you're listening to the Richest Men in Town about, not only how we face some of the things that are in the world, but some real world solutions, I think tonight is going to be right up your alley because Brian brings it and he always does. And I appreciate him. I appreciate you for introducing me to Brian because he swims in deep water and And I love it, man, because I'm in that shallow kiddie pool all the time, and it's nice to meet a fellow who's in the deep water.
Yeah, I mean, I think stick with this, guys. Stick with this. I know it's always a long form podcast. We just roll, right? We roll until the flow's done, and then we shut her down. But at the end of this podcast, there's some pretty powerful things about trust and, about some of those relationships that matter most. And I really think that I really think that people are going to find value all the way through this thing from the beginning to the end. And true to form, we still put a pin in it and say, Brian, get back here sometime soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for Brian, we appreciate you and all that you do and what you stand for and who you are. We appreciate your family for giving up a couple hours so you can hang out with us tonight. And for our guests and those who are listening to the Richest Men in Town, take some notes, learn something from Brian, and enjoy your time with Brian Grow on the Richest Men in Town.
Hey, let me just throw this out there. Let me just throw this out there. Sunday dinner topic of conversation, mind you, prior to dinner actually commencing.
Oh, wow.
The Wilsons, Adam Wilson, shout out to Adam Wilson, Adam and Heidi, have installed a bidet.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know if I've had this conversation with you on air or off air.
No, I don't think we've ever had a bidet discussion.
Okay. So what is your take on this aftermarket, obviously, installation of a bidet on your toilet?
I mean,
I guess they're available and they're like $40 to $60 on Amazon, high reviews.
Yeah, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about, I just don't know. And maybe I'm not cultured enough to be able to tell you why it would be such a great thing, but it seems a little disgusting to me. I don't know. I don't know. And you know what's so funny is it's not necessarily the bidet itself. It's the installation process. For some reason, you're down there wrenching on that thing. You got, you're adjusting the angle.
That's the part.
Yeah.
The aiming and I got to point this thing at the right,
Yeah. It's shooting out from between
People
your
are
legs.
claiming, man. People are claiming it's a don't look back, changes everything kind of purchase.
Well, did they get this because of the lack of availability of toilet paper during the pandemic?
No, but that's actually one of the benefits they're citing.
Could have been a power move right there, man.
Could have been.
Actually, you know what? I know several people that have done this.
Yeah.
And there's very few of them that I want to have that conversation with. That's the thing. You know what I mean?
Is it becoming a type of person? That person.
Oh yeah, you don't want to be the bidet guy. Oh, here comes Mike, dude. He's gonna talk about the freaking bidet again.
Yeah, look at that smile on his face.
Oh, he's gonna tell you how fresh he feels. I mean, come on.
So satisfied with his purchase.
Yeah,
I think I'd be more satisfied with the installation, the idea of
just getting it on there, or the aiming, the whole
getting it all fine tuned and right, and then you got to break it down. Hey, Kelly, how we doing on that approach? I mean, are we in the right spot?
So you're not self-testing the aim. Well, you're bringing in a third party. You're have a seat. Fire that bad boy up. Tell me what you think.
Mr. Gould, without getting into details, I believe the spray pattern is different for the male and the female on these bad boys.
Is there a setting, a button you push that
it's a pink and a blue?
Yeah.
That probably makes you like it less.
Well, I got to be honest with you.
You come across as kind of a purist, that whole beat up Chevy,
mm-hmm.
And
I don't. I do like to adopt new things and try new things, but when I'm sitting on the throne, it's I just want it to be like the old school throne, man. Yeah. I don't need a whole bunch of dials and buttons and
it's a minimalist.
I'm landing a plane, It's throttle down, fellas.
Yeah, what did it's that minimalist approach, It is adding some things that maybe don't need to be added. I'm not sure.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not anti. I'll just say that. I'm not going to shoot it down.
It's like it goes back to Peter Carlson, right? Perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Like, do we really need to be talking about adding these contraptions to our already complicated life,
But I mean, then if you're getting into the argument of cleanliness, and
I know, but then what if you love it so much and then you can't fathom the idea of going to a bathroom without it? And then you're packing it on vacation. What?
You got the old portable bidet. You're packing up. You got, okay, I got my shoes. I got
you got the charger? Yeah.
I got the sweatshirt. I got my iPhone charger.
Hey, did you get the bidet?
The bidet and the wrench that I need so I could disconnect the water line and then
and the mechanic trolley that you're going to need to like zip around underneath that toilet. Yeah.
You laying on your back, just scooting around the bathroom, man.
You're doing a really good job of talking me out of it.
Like I said, I'm not anti. I could find myself in that position.
My luck, there'd be a loose wire or something. I'd reach down there and like short out and just there he went.
Yeah. I mean, because like I'm a dog guy. And I've had dogs for a lot of years. And sometimes dogs, when they take care of their stuff, it gets a little messy every once in a while. And so you just break out the hose and you're blasting them and you're thinking like, and I've had that thought as I'm blasting them in the tush. I'm like, I don't know, this might be, there's something to this, man. You know what I mean?
Hot summer day.
Yeah. I've seen it in action and I've thought, yeah, I could get behind this.
Get behind this. I see what you did there. That's nice. That's subtle.
Yeah. So interesting, man.
Yeah, anyways.
Yeah. I'm glad we had this discussion actually.
So when I come to your house, I might snob it up and be like, your bathroom's not good enough for me.
Mike, you're in there with your bathroom caddy and your wrench, hooking up your portable bidet.
Hey, Tyler, you got some vice grips?
Got any plumber's tape in there, man? I need to tighten some stuff.
What's on tap? Tyler Gould? What are we doing?
Look, last week we decided we had a really good conversation with our friend Brian Grow, and Brian had put together. He had some questions that kind of have been on his mind, and he approached us with I want to say some of those questions, but he approached us with one of those questions. And
2 hours later,
yeah, we ran out of time. And so we told him we'd put a pin in it. And so tonight we're taking the pin out and we're gonna continue our conversation,
man. Yeah, I don't know how morale is gonna be for Brian Grow, because I don't know if you know this, but he's a Colts fan. Well, and I just endured some really bad football.
I was just going to say, Ricky walked in the door a few minutes ago from Gwen's soccer practice. She's like, how come you're not watching the football game? I'm like, well, it wasn't much of a football game, actually.
I think your Dodgers run differential. I think your Dodgers score more runs than the Colts or the Broncos. Maybe combined.
Yeah.
I just saw, hey, props to the Dodgers going into postseason, because I just saw the highest run differential since like 1939.
Yeah.
110 wins? No. 110 wins?
111 wins.
Yeah. Filthy.
And I think
and my boy Freeman, my cousin, was like 2 points away from the batting crown.
Okay, let's talk about that for 1 second.
Like 0.2 of a point, maybe.
Because the person that beat him, right?
Didn't play. DB move.
It is, man. It's right. Like the only way I could justify that is if your contract had some sort of incentive built in, that if you hit this point, you get a big balloon payment or something, then okay, I can kind of see it, but
that's messed up.
It's sort of bush league, man.
It is messed up.
Yeah.
But hey, can we? Okay, on the subject of baseball,
Yeah,
true richest man. Like I'm watching SVP Sports Center, right, and I'm watching the highlights, and I got to tell you, a baseball story made me think of richest men in town.
Let's hear it.
Steve Voigt, utility player for the Oakland A's.
Loved it.
Do you see it?
Oh yeah, dude. Well, like the whole thing, like his.
Hold on, back up. Hold on. You're sounding different, man. Hold on. I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either.
There we go.
Okay, his kids announcing his at bat, and then him.
And he tears up.
Oh yeah, it's like I actually teared up watching that. Dude.
I teared up watching. Okay, but I don't know if you saw the full highlight. Maybe you saw I don't know if you saw the highlight I saw. Kids announce him, and now our dad, right? Get out of here.
Yeah, forget about it.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
And it's in Oakland Coliseum, and he hits a home run, right field.
Yeah.
Then it flashes back to his first professional at bat. Same place.
Wow.
Full freaking circle.
Yeah, that whole thing was just
love that.
Was very cool.
That was very cool.
Like that was a cool moment. And and maybe we can get Brian Groh to weigh in on this with us as well, but I do want to bring up Aaron Judge for a second, because 62 home runs is a great feat, and you're in second place. Like that's right. Like that's the reality of that. Like, I mean, where are we with this?
Get him in here. Is he in here?
I mean, I'll get him in here. The thing about baseball I love baseball for a lot of reasons, because of the moments like the Voigt thing, right? And you have kind of these opportunities, have these really cool, like these moments. But then I hate baseball because they create these like iconic, almost godlike feats, and then they create all these rules around them. You know what I mean? I mean, let's be real for a second. 62 is a lot of home runs, but it's not 73.
Okay. I got so much about this. Brian Groh, welcome to the richest man in town. Welcome back. We put a pin in you last week. You are back, and I'm excited. But we have gone on some tangents while you've been hanging out in the waiting room.
Yeah, it sounds like we're off the rails.
We are off the rails, but I got 100%.
We're rarely on them, Brian. We're rarely on them.
That's what I love about you guys.
I got 100% backing my boy Tyler on this Aaron Judge thing. That is 62, which is like, they keep saying like the American League home run. Like, who cares?
Yeah. I mean, it's a feat.
It's baseball's attempt to whitewash some stuff that we were all crazy about back then that actually saved their league back then.
That baseball green lit, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was like state-sponsored steroidism.
I mean, Barry Bonds is walking up to the plate with the head the size of a beach ball, and no one's questioning what's happening here. They were just like, as long as that boy's hitting home runs, we're good with it.
I love what Dan Patrick said about it. He said, yeah, maybe it is a little inflated, but I still like WWE.
Exactly.
Yeah, were you not entertained? Sammy, Mark, Barry. You kidding me? Get in line, Judge.
That's what people go to the ballpark for nowadays.
Yeah, okay.
To see those.
And how about this? I'm going to throw this number out there. And I saw this and I couldn't believe it. I haven't fact-checked it, but
we don't need facts. We're not worried about facts.
We don't need facts. Aaron Judge struck out 167 times this season.
Oh, really?
Tony Gwynn struck out 167 times in the 90s.
I'd be curious to see if that's a legit fact, because that is pretty amazing. And it rings true to me a little bit just because Tony Gwynn was something else, right? He was sort of a machine. But so...
Okay, but hold on. Is Judge the MVP really? Because seriously, Ohtani?
Yeah, no. But I sort of have a problem with that as well, because I kind of feel like it's this whole like there's no other competition there. It's like he's the one guy that will ever come through that's going to throw the ball a million miles an hour and blast 70 home runs. It's such a
So let's not reward him or recognize
it's
him
an
in any
outlier.
way.
Yeah, like I'm like this. Like if we've got a graph and it's like this, and I got one that's way up here, nah,
Get rid of
delete
that guy.
one. Yeah, that is not real.
Top five ERA, right? Top 5 in wins, top 5 in home runs. What?
But they're never going to give it to a guy who's missing the playoffs. You want your MVP in the playoffs.
Yeah,
you
100%.
want that storyline. So
Yeah.
I think there's other forces at play. And you talk about whatever sport, you talk about football, they're never going to have an MVP that's on a bad team.
Way to bring us back. Way to bring us back. Way to ground us, Brian.
Yeah, you're not going to have. Well, I was going to say Trevor Lawrence, but this year, who knows, right? I mean, what
knows?
are they? 3-1.
It's not going to be Russell
Geno
Wilson.
Smith for MVP, man. Geno Smith.
Geno Smith.
He
Come
has a
on now.
case right now,
crazy.
stat-wise, record-wise.
Yeah.
It's one of those crazy stats, right? No one ever in the first 5 games of the season or whatever has had a higher completion percentage than Geno Smith.
Yeah.
You know, with that eyesight, you'd never know you lost Ruts.
I just like I said, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the whole Judge story. I dig it. The fact that he was bombing home runs. It's cool that he's a Yankee, that he passed Babe Ruth. So that was kind of cool. But at the end of the day, he's in second place by 11 runs, home runs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can't delete that just because you didn't like the guy at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
So,
baseball
hey,
has a bunch of funky stuff like that. Like Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. He's the hit leader, dude. Like he is the all-time hit leader. Put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Hey, so Brian, welcome to our pain, man. Because there have been many times when we are doing the podcast and a team that we love is on the TV, and Tyler sacrifices Dodger games all the time.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about those is they're a dime a dozen. What do they play? 160 something
162,
games.
man.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean, baseball games. If it is a football game, limited commodity, but
How were your Colts looking?
bad.
Yeah.
Oh, bad. Thank you for saving me actually on this Thursday night. They're playing the Broncos right now, and nobody has scored a touchdown in this game.
I love hearing the boos coming down on Russell Wilson. I dig that.
Is that a rich man?
Freakish,
Is that a
how
rich
much.
man trait?
No, it's not. I gotta make some changes. We're working on it.
There we
We're
go. We'll work on it tonight.
We're work in progress.
Beautiful.
Hey. So, and actually, in true style, like we looped you into a text exchange this morning,
We did, yeah.
right? In preparation, a lot of times Tyler and I text back and forth as we're thinking about the show and where we're going with the show, and then I was just like, I'm going to loop in Brian Grow, and we're just going to kick some things around. So I know you came last time with some things that you wanted to chat about. You had a question for us. You dropped a question, and then a couple hours happened, and it's like, oh, you had more? Come on back, and we'll do this. But what are your thoughts on some of that goodness that I dropped? Right, I'm a 321 Adam Grant newsletter, or James Clear newsletter. And he drops this: there can be no happiness if the things we believe in are different from the things we do. And so I threw that out into the atmosphere there. What's moving in you, Brian, as you think about the alignment and the importance of what we believe and what we do?
Well, and I responded back with a thought that I had. Something that I found a few years ago, a quote that I used over and over and over again, especially as I was talking to our youth teaching seminary. And that was, I think, a perfect companion to that. The challenge is not so much in closing the gap between our actions and our beliefs. Rather, the challenge is closing the gap between our beliefs and the truth. But I think no matter what, if you have
no, back up. There was more to it. There was more to that.
Sure.
You read the whole dang thing.
The whole thing. Okay.
The whole dang thing.
All right. The whole talk, here it comes. Just kidding.
No.
No, I'm playing. When you act badly, you may think you are bad, when in truth, you're usually mistaken. You're just wrong. The challenge is not so much closing the gap between our actions and our beliefs. Rather, the challenge is closing the gap between our beliefs and the truth. That is the challenge.
I love that.
So I think, I really think that, when we, and then pull in another one, when we know better, we do better. So as we're going through life, we have all these variables that come in and out of our lives from childhood, that are instilled in us from parents, that are instilled in us from teachers, that are instilled in us in just life experience. And life teaches us different things, good and bad. And so as we go through life, we cling on to things that we find to be true. And so this idea that a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on, your truth, my truth, a lot of it is just instead of saying my truth, it's really my experience or my opinion or the things that I have experienced, and I am interpreting it as to mean this. And that to me is what I'm holding right now. And people say, that is my truth. That is how I'm seeing things right now. So if we are taking those things in and we're living in that way, and then, if we take those things in and then we start acting contrary to those things, we start feeling like a hypocrite. We start feeling that discomfort of, oh man, what am I really doing? That confusion starts to set in. And then, happiness starts to become an elusive idea at that point, when our actions and the things that we are holding on to, those truths, are disjointed.
I love it, man. No, I totally agree with that. I do think I like your point though about opinion, right? Or shaped worldview based on experiences, and the differentiation between that and truth, right? Because there's a lot of things that I've experienced that make me think a certain way, but there's truth, right? I mean, I think that we kind of live in this world where truth has become very ambiguous. We don't want to define it. We want everyone to be able to say, this, what your experience is perfectly fine, and that is truth, right? And I think that if we're looking at how do we progress, I think that we have to be looking at something larger than just our experiences that we have in this vacuum, by ourselves.
I think the challenge too is like, can we hold it, but hold it loosely? Because like the idea is, I think of Paul, I think of First Corinthians 13, like look through the glass darkly. Like in the end, you and I, we're all walking through life and we're trying to look and figure this thing out. But when we come smack dab with truth as it was, is, and will be, and it contradicts necessarily what we've been holding on to, can we let go of what we've been holding on to and make some changes? Like, I love, Brian, that idea of like, hey, you're not bad. You're not bad in your nature. You're wrong. And you have this idea that when you feel stressed, you'll feel better by doing this thing. And this thing is contrary to what God wants us to do. Can we realize that and be like, that's not me being bad. I mean, that's not me by my nature. Yeah, by our nature, we're fallen and we're imperfect. But like, the idea is, you're wrong. That thing that you turn to doesn't make you happy.
Right. And
can we change?
That goes back, right. Right.
Can we change and be like, oh, I need to make those connections and reprogram, right? So that when I'm stressed or when I'm tired or when I'm hungry or I don't do those things that I have been kind of programmed to do or conditioned to do by my experience, right? Like hold those things, but hold it loosely. When something else comes along and that teaches us a better way, let go of the old thing that was wrong.
Yeah, an example that comes to mind really, really clearly and vividly is Jim Carey once said, "I hope everybody in the world becomes rich and famous so that they can find out that that's not it, that that's not going to solve your problems."
Jim Carey quote, that might be a first.
I got a couple more too. If you want, I actually, I got to speak at my convocation at school, and I quoted the great philosopher Jim Carey. So I have another one that maybe we can bring up later. But something really special has happened between our conversation last week and the one tonight, and we got to hear from a prophet of God. We got to hear from prophets, seers, revelators, and one of the things that President Russell M. Nelson for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints said, he says, "Here is the grand truth. While the world insists that power, possessions, popularity, and pleasures of the flesh bring happiness, they do not. They cannot. What they do produce is nothing but a hollow substitute for the blessed and happy state of those who keep the commandments of God." So, yeah, you're so right. We pick up that thing and we say, man, like, I got a little taste. I got a little taste of the power. I got a little taste of the possessions. I got a little taste of the popularity, and that feels really good. But we know those things don't last. We know that no matter how much you accumulate, as Jim Carrey said, I hope that everybody can experience that so they can find out for themselves that's not it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. That's what I'm talking about. That's why we have you back, Brian.
Hey,
That's
Brian,
why you're back.
Tyler, just so you know, Brian is planting rabbit holes, right? Like, General Conference could be a whole nother 2 hours. You know what I mean? Like, what resonated and what's moving in us after we have an opportunity to sit down and have that experience that was this last weekend. I mean, I got to tell you, there's some things in there. There's some things in there that are, names of the Savior. And we take upon ourselves the names of the Savior. What name of the Savior should I take upon myself today? Thought that was a powerful, powerful thought. The idea of Russell M. Nelson teaching us that Jesus Christ overcame the world, and we can overcome the world. Right? Yeah, there's some great things. Great thing. Maybe we get Brian Grow back in here one of these days, and we talk impressions from General Conference, Tyler Gould.
There you go. There you go. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Well, I threw something else out in the chat, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'll pull this up. This again is from James Clear, 321 newsletter dropped today. The idea of being a little bit contrarian, right? Let's start with a test. Do you have any opinions that you would be reluctant to express in front of a group of your peers? If the answer is no, you might want to stop and think about that. If everything you believe is something you're supposed to believe, could that possibly be a coincidence? Odds are it isn't. Odds are you just think whatever you're told. That's from Paul Graham.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know how I feel.
Oh, what do you think? Let's hear.
I don't know. I mean, let's start with a test. Do you have any opinions that you would be reluctant to express in front of a group of your peers? If the answer is no, you might want to stop and think about it.
Tyler Gould, there's no way, and you know what, that you don't have opinions that that would be contrary to a group of peers. Now, you're not afraid to share them.
Yeah, that's probably the piece
but
that
you got
Tyler has.
That's the piece that
there's your rub
issue with. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I certainly have opinions that are way off from what everyone else would believe in if I'm sitting in a room, but I'll tell you what my opinion is, and I'm not going to not tell you. I've been in that space where I haven't told you, and I've regretted it, and I've walked out regretting it, and I've circled back, walked myself back into places and said, you know what, let me share this with you before I go. Because I feel like if you have something that has positively impacted your life and helped you to become better, like, why wouldn't I share that with somebody? Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I've felt walking away like I'm hanging on to this thing that is a pearl that I just sold it. I sold everyone short on this one. Like I walked away going, these people wouldn't respect my nugget. And maybe it's because I'm getting older, man. Like I don't care. Like respect me, love me, hate me. It is what it is. I just don't really care.
But I think that's the power of the orchestra, right? We don't all have the same. We're not all bringing the same instrument to this party. Like you have experiences, you have those nuggets, you have those pearls, and I've got experiences, and Brian's got experiences. And when we come and we fear or we feel that reluctance to let that shine,
yeah,
that's robbing people of things.
And I think right here, like the three of us talking together, it's easier, right? Because we're generally on the same wavelength on things, and so when you're kind of in that area, it's easier to kind of throw it out. If I throw something out to Brian and Brian's like, I agree, but this is kind of my take on it, Brian and I are still going to be friends. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be good. We're okay. But I think it's when we feel like someone's going to judge that thing that we believe, you know, then it becomes really hard to say that thing. And but I've got some friends that are on opposite ends of the spectrum, politically, religiously, right, across the board. And sometimes I'll have conversations and they'll share something with me, and I'm like, whoa, like I needed that thing, man. Like why hasn't that been looped into what I've been, doing? I think that's important. So anyway, I guess long story short, my feeling is, yeah, I have opinions that people aren't going to love, but I don't want to be afraid to share them, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Coming from, I feel like I'm on the other end of the spectrum where there have been many times where I'm like, man, I need to say something. And for whatever reason, did not.
I've been there too, Brian, for 100%. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. But, I can think of two experiences very recently or pretty recently. One where, some people were harping on, technology and phones and things like that. And I was like, you know what, let me give a little bit of a contrarian view. I was teaching seminary at the time. One of our leaders had taught us seminary teachers, maybe we need to rethink the phones in the classroom for our students, because this is something that's going to be in their life all the time. And if we don't teach them the correct way to use it, if we don't bring good tools and good experiences with it, then, there's all sorts of ways it could go. But if you can get them to have spiritual experiences on their phone, if you can help them use the technology to understand how to connect scriptures that aren't quick, easy connections to make, if you can help them link conference talks to scripture verses and connect that with their own thoughts that they can punch in just really quick, that's a powerful thing. And I had shared that in a group of much older individuals, and the whole idea was just poo-pooed, and everybody was all like, okay, I guess, like, I was like, what? No, this is good. And, I talked about how much the church had poured into it as far as finances go. They did all these things to build these robust gospel library and LDS tools to help us have those tools. And people are just, nah. But I'll often be sitting, a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in a class, and, I was sitting there going, man, if there was somebody in here that was struggling with that thing they're talking about right now, man, how bad does that person feel right now? How isolated does that person feel right now? And unfortunately, as my responsibility, and one of the things I do is work with our full-time missionaries. And I had somebody sitting there who is not a member of the church in that lesson. I kept looking over and just seeing if I could get anything from their face about what was being kind of discussed and talked about. And man, in that moment, I go, should I say something? And then I second guess myself and go, man, no, I'm probably the only one thinking this. Come to find out, I talked with some people that were in the class later, and they're like, no, yeah, we went off the rails there. And that's sometimes hard for me to do, is to offer that contrarian view, to offer that, well, actually kind of idea to the group.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awkward spot, right? But I also think that if you're doing it with the right spirit, like, I don't know, like for me, like I've been in that spot, right, where you're sitting there and you're like, oh, dude, this is so, I gotta say something, and then you're like, you're having that internal debate. But then I also kind of feel like maybe that's someone giving me a kick in the shorts that I got to do something right now and say something. And that feeling when you walk away from those moments and you're like, gosh darn it, like I blew that one. I should have freaking said something I didn't, But yeah, I've been there. But I think that I kind of feel like this, Brian, like if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it too. I seriously, I have that thought a lot of times when I'm sitting in meetings and a discussion's going on. I'm like, no, I need to say something. And then I'll tell myself, like, you know what? I know someone else is thinking the same thing. Like, I'll be the guy that's going to lay the egg out there for everybody.
Well, and I think I just need to reframe it as this is a check and a balance, because I think the heart of the quote you just read for us, Mike, is we need to not get so in such groupthink that we're just doing things because everybody else is doing and saying.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And I think that's
ourselves.
And I think that's Paul Graham's point, right? Like think, right? I think, Brian, when we first had you on, I think Jimmy Valvano's Never Give Up speech came up, right? Like a good day, and that idea of like, are we thinking through life, or are we simply, because every time you turn on a device, every time you listen to someone else, every time you turn on a podcast, you're listening to someone's thinking. The thought, like, is that generating thoughts of your own? Are you feeling some things, and are you thinking through life? Because I think that there's some forces at play that would love for men and women to just not think about who they are, not think about truth, not think about the quest for truth, not think about, right, those things that they want to do with their life, and those ambitions and those goals. Man, it would love, the enemy of our souls would love it if there was just autopilot.
Well, I think that's why it's important. I just think, like, I've been in those moments too where I've said something and someone's been like, you know what? I totally disagree with what you just said. And when you get over the sting of like someone slapping you down, and you're like, you know what? Maybe there's something, maybe I need to rethink.
Rethink.
Here,
and that's the hard part, is staying in it, is not letting that emotion, letting that pride, letting that natural man take over and say, well, what a jerk.
Yeah.
But again, if we hold that loosely, like, here's what I got. I'm 47 years on this planet, and here's kind of what I think about these things. And as I'm interacting with other people and we're being genuine, and you come across and you change my mind, or you help me make a change, and I let go of this thought that was inaccurate, and I pick up a better understanding, and I'm able to do better. That's it. That's the game, right?
Or at the same time, when something comes to you and you're like, nope, that's not it, your grip gets a little tighter on that thing.
Yeah, right.
So no matter what, you're balancing those things, and you're saying, you get more nuance into those things. And I think that's really what happens when we have those, well, I don't know if I completely agree on that. And then, we bring up some, and we have that back and forth, and then it gets formed into something that we go, oh, okay, we're seeing the same thing. We're not getting to it the same way. I want to ask you guys a question really quick. So when we talk about Zion, when we talk about what Zion is, Moses, how is Zion described?
One heart, one mind, no poor among them.
Yeah. And so I think if we threw
Wow, that's
that
interesting,
out there,
right? That's interesting.
if we threw that out there, I'm going to just focus on the last line, and there were no poor among them. How does that happen? And if we threw that into a conversation, we could see some very political lines drawn exactly how that happens. Well, one side could say, well, that's great. Every person was working hard. Every person was contributing. Every person was doing their part in society. And another side would say, whoa, we accomplished it because we set up a system in place where everybody was able to contribute in a way they could contribute. But we were able to provide for people that fell on hard times or who were really struggling, who had, bad circumstances happen. And you see, the truth is, there are no poor among them. That's what we need to get to. But a lot of the time, the contention or the conflict comes and how we get there and what people think is going to take us there. And I think that's what's really interesting to me, and something that over the last few months, as I've been pondering and thinking and questioning and doing things, is not only what is true, but am I interpreting it into action in the correct way?
I like that. I think I agree with you 100%. I think that, that's the value, right, to me, because there's some things that I have formulated in my head, right, that I think I know, but I'm not 100% there. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I'm working those things out. I'm 47 years old. I'm still working some of these things out. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm thinking, right? And so I think the power of that ability to kind of put yourself out there and throw your beliefs or your opinions or your life experiences on the table and let someone else come back to you and say, hey, this is maybe if you looked at it this way, right, you'd have a different take on things. Because there's a lot of things that politically, spiritually, that I'm formulating, right? And they've shifted, right? I thought I had it in one spot and it's moved and it's moving. And so I think that conversation is so key to that,
Yeah. When I think too, it's like, what's the standard, right? What are we aligning our thoughts to? And I think that in General Conference, Elder McConkie gave this incredible talk about just living in the 5 Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, 3rd Nephi. And like he was a mission president and his missionaries were all about spending time in the words of Jesus Christ to come to know him better. And I think that when we are talking about truth, like capital T truth, the more we can align our lives, our thoughts, our patterns after that example, the happier we'll be.
And I kind of feel like I've had conversations with people over the years, right, that are like, well, I don't like going to this place with this group of people because everybody knows way more than I know, right? I don't feel comfortable or confident to be able to sit in that group and have these types of conversations. And I think I just think that we have to be open to the idea that none of us are there. I think that's so important, right? Because here's the thing. You sit in that group, that meeting that you talked about, Brian, right? Where someone's saying something, you're thinking, "Oh, this guy's probably really uncomfortable." I feel like a lot of times in those meetings, we want to sound like we're an authority on something, And I don't know that there's a lot of value in that, even if you're the authority on that thing. I think to approach it from the side of, hey, this is how I've experimented on this and how I've got where I'm at today, but I'm open to the ideas of what everyone else is doing and how they're getting there. I think that's the conversations I want to have. Like, I want to have this open forum when I'm in those meetings where I've got someone who's, 75 years old that's gone down that road, and someone who's 18 who's like, this is how I'm looking at it. And I can kind of sit in the middle and go, oh man, like I need to delete some things and reconfigure some things, man.
So can I bird walk on that feeling of not feeling comfortable in that space, right? I've had this thought kicking around last couple of days. One scripture that comes up quite a bit on the richest men in town, actually, Tyler, is that 2 Timothy chapter 1, right? God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, right? Courage, sound mind.
Yeah.
So and I'm going to exercise some liberty here, and hopefully I don't get myself in trouble. If you took out fear and just kind of pondered on what other feelings God hath not given us, because I think a lot of folks get angry with God because they don't feel some things that don't come from him, right? Like, I don't feel like I belong. Where does that feeling come from? I don't feel loved. Where does that feeling come from, right? Like, I think that sometimes we got to check ourselves. Like, I feel this thing and I feel this thing, but it's like, where is that feeling coming from? And if it's not coming from God, we might want to make some changes, right? Because if you think about it, I don't feel comfortable in this space. Maybe there's some comparison happening where I'm coming in and I'm comparing what I might know to brother so-and-so who's in the pew putting on airs, wanting everyone to think he knows stuff, right? And it's like, I'm contriving these feelings when none of that comes from God.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I think we might have talked about this last time, this idea of kind of the self-talk, the ways that you kind of talk to yourself. And I've been down the dance on both sides, right? Like, I'm walking into a room and I'm like, I'm the worst. I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough. I'm not, these people are all better than me. And there's been times where I've walked in, I'm like, heads and shoulders above everybody in here. You know what I mean? Like, so I've been on both sides of that. But I think that there's, there's some, I agree with you, Mike, that we need to recognize where those good things come from. But I think that we have to remind ourselves, it's that whole Saturday Night Live, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Right. But I do think like the way that we address ourselves is important. And I think that goes back to our conversation that we had last time we were together about identity. Right. I think that if we're anchored in our identity, we can discard those feelings of lack of worth or other things quicker. They're not going to go away entirely, but we can move past those quicker, and this is a conversation I have with my kids all the time. Like, yeah, life's tough and you're facing all these things, but look at who you are. Like, look what you know about yourself, like where you came from. And, that's miraculous in and of itself. And so that should give you just this shot of confidence that maybe not that you're not necessarily that you're going to walk in with a superiority complex, but that you're going to walk in feeling like I'm bigger than what I think I am. I'm more than what I think I am, And I think that's a conversation I have with myself on a regular basis, because I think it's important that we remind ourselves, if we're anchored in identity, that becomes a lot easier. In the right identity, I guess I should say.
Yeah. All good things.
All good things.
None of which Brian Grow had on his radar tonight to talk to us about.
It's all right. I love where this has gone. It's gone a lot of different places already. And I think some of the things that I talk about, as you were talking, Tyler, one of the questions that I kind of previewed for you guys post show last week, kind of builds on that idea of negative versus positive self-talk when we're totally ignoring who we really are versus when we have that understanding. And this is the question that I posed to you. And so maybe we can either say, the answer Tyler gave just now is a really good one, or maybe we can expand upon it a little bit.
I don't
know if I've ever said
it's done.
I don't know if I've ever said the answer Tyler just gave is a good one.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that.
I loved it.
I think he's dreaming that that's what I say right now. I don't know.
I'm waiting.
Let me
for
say
it.
it. I'll be your cheerleader. I don't mind taking on their role. So this was my question. So we have two idioms in the English language they're really.
I love this already. Idioms. I love this already.
Yeah. So the two idioms are I'm stuck in a rut and I'm in the groove. And one is always used in a negative tense, and one is always used in a positive tense. When I'm in the groove, things are smooth sailing. I am performing at a high efficient level. But when I'm in the rut, I am down, I am failing, I am stuck. I don't know where to go or how to get out. So I think I thought it would be interesting, and really, especially in the conversation of, internal monologue, dialogue, whatever you want to say. What do you think leads us into each of those things? When does a rut, are they ever the same thing, or are they completely separate? What behaviors contribute to rut? What contributes to groove?
Mike, I'm going to let you field this because I got to be honest with you, Brian. I have had this conversation since we talked last time with like 4 different people.
Oh, that's exciting.
I'm like,
excited
break
to hear.
it down for me. What's going on? So, Mike, I'm going to let you dive in, man.
Okay. Couple thoughts, right? I'm going to say, first of all, direction, trajectory. In my mind, I'm thinking rut is plateau, static, or if anything, descending, and groove would be upward trajectory, not necessarily consistently up, right? Sometimes it's a little bit up and down, but over time, it's going to be heading in the right direction. So, when I think of groove, I think of flow, and I think of that state of flow, right? That state of mind where someone's fully immersed in the thing that they're doing, and there's some engagement. Where rut would be the exact opposite. There is no immersion in the activity, and there is no engagement. I think it's interesting that we were just talking about, being awake and being thinking through our lives. And I think that sometimes a state of rut would be not attacking life and simply going through motions, where groove would be wholehearted, grabbing life by the throat and being anxiously engaged and immersed in the thing that you're doing, where time is lost, right? In a rut,
like that.
The clock can't go fast enough. In a groove, it's like, oh man, there went 4 hours.
I
Right?
like that. Have you ever? And I'm very simple, right? I'm a very simple-minded man.
Simple's great.
This is like the visual that I have when I think about it. Have you ever been mountain biking on like a narrow trail, and there's that rut that's in the middle from the water, and your tire gets stuck in that, and it just ends all progress, right? Like when I think of rut, that's what I think of, like this narrow, almost like a trap, right? That you just can't find your way out of. It impedes your progression, right? And then when I think about groove, you ever played those games where you take a marble and you put it on the little ramp and it just kind of zips around, and it's just fast and unimpeded, and it gets to where it needs to go, right? Quickly. Those are the two visions that I have when I think about those things. And because I brought this up last time we talked. I said, well, I want to read the scriptures every night and make sure I'm praying on a regular basis. Is that a rut or is that a groove? Like where does one become the other, I guess? And so go ahead, Brian.
As I've thought about it, and I've thought about it for a long, long time, is it supposed to be there? I don't think a rut is supposed to be there. I think a groove has a very specific purpose to be there.
Yeah.
And so when I think of those things, and especially when we're talking about those things in our internal dialogue, internal monologue, I really think a lot of those negative things that we beat ourselves up about aren't supposed to be there. And I know that because if you really quickly just when you're just hammering yourself and you're beating yourself up, flip that to you saying that to somebody you love, somebody you care about. And automatically you're like, whoa, I feel really gross about this. I feel guilty. I feel terrible. If I'm saying things to my wife that I'm saying to myself in my head, that is not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And so that to me is a rut. That is something that has gone into my brain. And we know that what we think about, it starts building connections in there, whether we want it to or not. So if the rut, you're just going, I'm stupid. And that
kind of goes to Tyler's analogy of that bike path, right?
Yeah,
because
you can't progress at that point.
As you travel that network, it gets entrenched in your thought pattern, and it's interesting too, because it loops back around to that quote, right? So many times, like we've talked to folks that have benefited from therapy, and therapy is about incorrect mental patterns, right? And it's about identifying those things. It's like, do you understand that right now you're on that network that is path of least resistance and puts you there, and it's incorrect.
Yeah.
It's a mental rut.
Yeah.
But the groove is when you start saying, I can do this, I can accomplish this, I can learn from this, I can grow from this. That is a groove that has that ascending trajectory, that boost, that marble going around the track, that it can pick up speed, it can go where it needs to go because you've intentionally put it there.
Yeah. I love
that.
And
I like that idea of momentum behind it. And like when Tyler was talking about that rut on the bike path, all progress stops, right? It sucks the energy you're throwing into that bike and you're actually decelerating. Whereas in that groove, it's almost perpetual motion, right? Yeah. Once you do the thing that puts you into that spot, there's momentum. And it's like, man, this thing, like I'm drafting behind somebody.
Right.
Right. Like, oh, this is almost effortless.
It's the football term of in the zone, right? He's in the zone. He's completing every pass. Everything's right on target. It's just not thinking about it. It's just happening, And
I think personally, like I dig the idea of a routine. We talk to people from time to time about morning routines. Hey, walk me through. How do you win the day? What does it look like? And then sometimes I'm like, oh man, I want to buck that thing.
Yeah.
And I want to do every day differently. And it's like, sometimes there is something to be said for automating some of those things in life so that you can get in that groove and so that you've got wind in your sails going into your day versus like, and I'm coming at a busy day and I'm going to get ran over because I'm in a rut.
And I'm curious, Brian, like in your mind, like, how do you transition yourself from the rut to the groove?
Oh man, that connects so well to another question that I had written down. And so maybe we can travel there, but balancing demanding more for yourself with guilt and shame, because guilt and shame, like those are the water that create that rut in the trail, in the road. And so how do we
whoa, throw a highlighter on that. Say that again.
The guilt and shame are the water that create that rut in our thinking, in my opinion.
I like that. Yeah.
So how do we,
I want to put a copyright trademark on that bad boy. That's a great opinion to have.
Well, so how do those things, how do we pull out of that nosedive when we're going into that? That is really like how there's 1,000 things we could probably do, but man, it's hard to do. And that's something I've been struggling with. When I start nosediving in a situation, when I start responding in ways that I'm angry or I get depressed or things like that, to answer that question is one of the hardest things in the world. And it's happened to me where I've been in a mood, I've been down, and somebody in my life recognizes and they go, "Hey, what can I do for you?"
Yeah. 100%.
And it's a shoulder shrug and I'd tell you if I knew.
Yeah.
But I think that's so important for us to explore. So I am open to and all ideas that you have.
Yeah.
So Tyler, prepare to hit a minute marker where you might want to edit the audio track on this bad boy. Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited about this. Whenever Mike tells me this things, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Here we go. It's not every day that I get to, mention Stranger Things.
All right.
Season 4.
Was this the most recent one, by the way?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy scary. But there's this Godfather clock. And the Godfather clock starts to chime and someone's going to die. Right? And this Godfather, as I watched this, I actually had this thought of like, man, I wonder, there's probably some Godfather clocks in my life that when that thing starts to chime, it's like, uh-oh, right? Like it's a mental track or it's a pattern, it's a habit loop or it's whatever. And I think that there's something to that. I think that if I really spent some time looking at my habits, looking at my life, there's some things that there's some antecedents, there's some triggers, there's some things that are like, and this is when Mike starts or this is when Mike starts to get proud, or this is when Mike starts to, and man, if we can identify those things, because, okay, so in the movie, the four chimes on the Godfather clock, people start wigging out, they're entranced, people can't wake them up, they're in this thing and bad
they're in
stuff.
The rut.
Yeah,
they're in the
and
rut, man.
Bad stuff starts to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just throwing that out there, that I believe that if you probably did some work, you could look and see, ooh, you're heading there, right? Like
totally
go upstream and address it sooner, go upstream and avoid that. It's like that. It's like that story where guy turns the corner, takes 3 steps, falls in the hole in the road. Someone comes over, helps him out. Next day, guy turns the corner, takes 3 steps, falls in the hole. Someone's got to help him out. The next day, he doesn't turn on that road and he finds another way to get home. So he avoids the hole, right? I think so many times we have these habits and it's like, hey, if we could actually put some upstream thinking involved and identify those things that might be, and the crazy thing is it's different for Tyler, it's different for Mike, it's different for Brian, right? We've all got strengths, we've all got some things that we've got some blind spots and we got some holes in the armor. And I think that if we can address those things and develop, then we might be able to, be a little more proactive. That's a thought.
Yeah, no, I like that thought. Because I feel like there's times where I'm like, where I'm not at my best, and then I can really beat myself up, right? Because you see yourself right there. You're like, oh, that was not good, and gosh darn it, I think I just, you start adding up all these terrible things that what this has created or what it will create, and for me, honestly, I think a lot for me is I have to remind myself that this place where I am right now is not me and is not who I want to be, right? And so for me, a lot of that is on, and I say this a lot, but a lot of this is just remembering that I've been able to be like, I've done some good. I've treated people good. I've done some good things. I'm capable of doing those good things, and I can get myself out of that. That's sort of my transition point, Brian, is like, I have to remember the good I'm capable of, you know, and that sort of is a way for me to crawl myself out of the rut and get myself back in the groove, you know, because when I start thinking about, oh man, I said this, I shouldn't have said this. And then it just becomes this snowball effect of like, I'm the worst person that's ever walked the face of the earth. You know what I mean? And then it's just, we get that place and we allow ourselves to believe it. And interestingly, you mentioned, you know, someone will say to you sometimes like, hey, what can I do? And oftentimes that's my wife who says, hey, you know, Tyler, you're kind of in this, you got some bad juju going on, man. Like
here's a Snickers.
Yeah, do something different. And I appreciate that. I think in the moment it's sort of hard to hear because, you know, you're being called out. And typically when that conversation is first broached with me, I'm 100% aware that I'm being not the greatest. You know, I'm fully aware of it. So when someone says to you like, hey man, like, I'm not really digging where you're coming from, that stings, but I appreciate that conversation. But for me, it's just this thing I have to tell myself, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it.
Okay. That was kind of a throwaway line that you gave, though. You say, I appreciate those conversations, but that is a journey to get to a place where you appreciate those conversations. That takes a really big mental shift to not take that when somebody says, whoa, something's going on with you, something's up, and not to put up a wall or put up a defensiveness. I'm fine. Like, put on the mask. I'm, you know, and be like, you know, I'm not okay right now. I don't know exactly what it is. Can you talk through through it with me? And that's a really hard thing to do.
It is a hard
I agree. I think, Tyler, I appreciate you mentioning your wife, because there's a lot of times I'll have conversations with Kelly. It's like, I know I'm in a funk right now.
Yeah.
Like, I know I don't have a genesis for it, right? I don't have it's because this thing happened. Sometimes it's just, you know, it sometimes it feels incredible, and sometimes it's that haze of life we talked about. But I think I want to go back to our namesake, right? I want to go back to George Bailey. George Bailey has a conversation with Potter, and Potter offers him everything, right? So he's got a lot on his mind. He shoots it down because he sees what happens. The second you start shaking hands with Potter, it's bad situation, right? But he goes home. If you remember, he goes home and he's thinking about things, and he says to all of that ugliness comes out. You know, Mary, you could have, why you marry a guy like me? You could have married Sam Wainwright. You could have this, you could have that.
And the old house. It's no wonder the kids aren't dead.
Right? All of that.
Yeah.
And she grounds him, right? They have a moment, and she grounds him. And I think, so that's one thought. And then the other thought, and come follow me right now. We're reading, finishing up Isaiah. Isaiah 58 talks about law of the fast. Man, what if the law of the fast was actually one of the secrets of the universe that could really help us, right? But in that, one of the blessings of the law of the fast mentions being a repairer of the breach. And I think it's really important, Tyler, you were mentioning, I've been better than this, right? I've been better than what I am right now. I think if we could all acknowledge that we hold the tools and the ability to fix things, right? Like, case in point, the other day I was feeling a little casual. I had a task to do at work. My job was to introduce somebody to a group of people. Me and this person are really tight. I came at it very informal and very disrespectful. That night, as I'm thinking about things and saying, going through, taking inventory on the day, loud and clear, was like, that was wrong. I sent an email to him and I said, that was wrong. You worked too hard. You are the man. You are the kind of man that deserves more respect than I gave you in that instance. And I'm sorry. And I promise you right here, right now, that will not happen again. Right? He emails me back and is just like, the freak was that? Like, I took the mockery as love, right? Like, it's not, and it was fine. But who cares in the end? Because it was wrong in my book, right? But like, we hold, when it isn't right, we can tell ourselves we've been better and we will be better. But we also can tell ourselves or look inside and say, is there something off that I can fix here? Right? Because a lot of times we get bumped into that rut. A lot of times an exchange will happen. I've got stuff. Brian's got stuff. Me and Brian collide. I do something, say something, and boom, that thing takes me off of my path and puts me in a rut. And a lot of times it's, hey, just go back and identify that thing that puts you in the rut and repair the breach, right? And I think that there's some power. I think that there's some truth to that.
I think one of the big things that we got to do when we're in those moments is get really curious. And whether we do it with a notebook or a Word document or with another person, I think we just have to start asking some questions about, how did I get here? Why would I do something like that? Why am I feeling such negative effects from XYZ situation? Because I think it's really interesting when we take a step out, and Tyler, you were talking about, we're having this worldly experience, we're spirits having an earthly experience. And I'm going to refer back to President Nelson's talk from this last conference, Overcoming the World, because he says, how then do we overcome the world? And he teaches them things. He brings up King Benjamin teaching about the natural man. But then he talks about things that he's been planting seeds for years since he became the prophet. He says that overcoming the world isn't an event that happens in a day or two, it happens over a lifetime. We cultivate faith in Jesus Christ.
Hold on. So in a life, like patience with yourself.
Yeah,
right?
That's huge. That is huge. Yeah,
huge. Repenting daily. And what is repentance?
Just
change, then getting curious about why in this worldly experience, why with this body that is having, and this brain that, is taking all these inputs, and then it puts something out that's bad and ugly and something that I don't want to put out. Let me ask some questions about that. Let me do some internal auditing. Let me do some investigation. He says, we stay on the covenant path and are blessed with spiritual strength, personal revelation, increasing faith, and the ministering of angels. Living to the doctrine of Christ can produce the most powerful, virtuous cycle, creating spiritual, I'm going to add groovy momentum in our lives.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I loved those comments. I mean, those resonated with me as well when I heard those, and I want to be clear. Like, it's, my wife is really good about reminding me of some things, and sometimes I'm not really good about receiving those things. I mean, there's been times where I've said, you know what, I'm gonna remove myself from this place and get in my car and I drive around, and the words of my wife sink deep into my soul, right? as I'm driving around. But sometimes, like, yeah, I'm not good at that. I would love to be. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think you just stumbled on something. So I think Brian kind of gave us a wisdom key there with the curious, because, Tyler and you and I cannot stand the I am who I am approach. right? But the danger with not staying or getting and staying curious about our behavior is it starts to solidify into this, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
This is who I am, right? But like, I think I get in the car, I remove myself from the situation, I get in the car, that's stumbling on like, what does it mean to get curious? How do you intentionally get curious? You don't just go to the medicine cabinet, open up a prescription called curiosity and take a pill, right? You need to have some type of, because I bet you halfway through that drive, you're starting to be reflective in those words, like you said, thinking deep, like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
This is what she's talking about, right? But so, I mean, I think that there, and Brian, you talked about that notebook or whatever, there needs to be some intentionality and some intentional space for you to be quiet and still so that we can indeed get curious and make changes.
Yeah, and I think that idea of patience can't be overstated, right? I think it's so important that we, that when I was younger, I wanted to be at a certain place and I wanted to be there now, right? Like I'm working hard. It should be now, and I've just realized like I have to take a step back and be willing to say, hey, are you working towards it? Are you working towards it?
Are you doing anything to move this thing forward?
Because if you are, then you'll get where you need to be. If you're not, then, we need to have a different conversation with ourselves. Like, am I just, feel like I'm owed that? Right? Or is
like
this
that's
something
just going to happen?
It's just going to happen because someone owes it to me? Or do I need to put in the work, And but that idea of patience is so big because I'm quick to extend grace to someone else, but when it comes to myself, I'm really good at beating the living tar out of me. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, what in the,
Yeah. Well, hey, this idea of being curious, right, and being in spaces where we might be able to be quiet internally, reminds me. So the other day I had lunch with my good friend Tyler Gould, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown and I hung out and we had some lunch. This episode brought to you by The Habit. It's a good burger.
Good stuff.
A good
burger.
onion
rings.
Good onion rings. So he does this activity with kids at schools, and he has this tape measure, old fashioned like track and field, kind of like I'm measuring shot put, right? Where it's an old wheel tape, and he puts it down and rolls it out like 80 feet, right? And he has the kid, hey, how old are you? Well, I'm 14, I'm 15. Hey, stand here. Hey, English teacher, how old are you? Well, I'm so-and-so. And hey, go stand down there, right? And go find your age on this tape measure. And the idea is he's like, hey, you might want to listen to that guy. That guy's been further down the road, right? Well, this last time he said, hey, let's get some people around this guy. Hey, who wants to represent Instagram? Somebody comes up and stands next to the kid. Who wants to represent TikTok, right? All of these things huddled around this kid where he's at in life, right? All of these influences, all of these voices. And finally, the kid's like, hey, Mr. Brown, I got so much going. I can't even see my life. Like I can't even see where I'm going on this continuum represented by the tape measure on the floor. And I think that is very insightful for the conversation that we're having right now, because there are voices, there are inputs, there are things that if we don't manage could make it very difficult for us to hear God, make it very difficult for us to realize what's wrong, where we've maybe misstepped, where we might need to forgive other people, or who we might need to serve, right?
Cultivate
all of these
relationships,
things,
right?
Yeah, are clouded because the bandwidth is nutty around us, right? And I think, again, going back to the idea of like, how can we get intentionally quiet so that we can be curious as to what this life is really about. What do I think? What are those thoughts that are right? What are those thoughts that are wrong? I'm not bad. I'm wrong. And I can make some changes, right? I thought it was just kind of a cool experience. It's so crowded, so busy around me, I can't even see my life.
Yeah.
I think there's some truth there. Brought to you by a 15-year-old kid.
Nah, I don't believe that. No, I'm just kidding. I like it. I don't know. Did we even touch on what you just said, Brian? I mean, did we dance around that thing? Because
no, I think that was definitely a conversation that I needed.
I needed it too. Yeah, for sure.
Just so you know, that's why I don't mountain bike those dang ruts.
Yeah, that's one of my reasons. I got a few others.
So as you were talking, there were a couple things that came to my mind. One comes from somebody I know you love, Mike, Sir Ken Robinson. He just says things in a certain way that I understand. He makes me know and understand things. One of the things he talked a lot about in a book I'm reading and a couple of videos of his that I've seen is life is not linear, it's organic. And I love that idea because, a lot of the time, especially, in his field of education, he's talking about how that's the one I'm reading, Finding Your Element. And
it's
then
in the pile, brother.
He has The Element that he wrote before that one as well. That is another just fantastic read. He has TED Talks and things like that are in the millions of views.
Oh, they broke the internet. Yeah.
Broke them. Absolutely. But I think one of the problems is that when we think of life linearly, we look at where we are on that measuring stick. And then we look at the person next to us and where they are on their measuring stick. And I think the big secret is, like he said, life is not linear, it's organic. And we ebb and we flow and we go back and we go forth. My wife and I are currently in the process of moving. We have been moving stuff out of our house, cleaning our house. And when we first moved in, there was this little tree that started growing in our yard. And it wasn't intentionally planted. She didn't plant it. I didn't plant it, but it started growing. And as we've been there, my wife has grown really fond of it. And she's like, we got to take this with us. We got to take this tree with us. So we were like, okay, let's get a pot for it. Let's dig it out. Let's put it in the pot. And as we took it out, it was getting to be a good size, green leaves, very vibrant, very, very alive. As soon as we dug that thing out of the ground and put it in the pot, every single leaf just came off in the matter of days, maybe a week. And all of a sudden we're like, oh man, we screwed up. We killed this tree. It's awful. And we're like, you know what? We'll just see. We'll put it in the plant. We'll add some fertilizer to it. We'll see what we can do. We'll give it a couple weeks. And then if it doesn't live, we'll just trash it.
Sounds like an allegory.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So you know where I'm going with this. But there was such a rush when one day my wife, who loves Marco Polo, she sends me a Marco Polo, and it's just of this tiny little leaf that is coming at the end of one of the branches. And she says, we didn't kill it. And it was just this, I think when we think of life organically, we realize that sometimes there are times where we're being transplanted. We're being put in a different place. And the stresses that go along with that are causing us to maybe withdraw a little bit, or are causing us to put ourselves into survival mode for a little while. And that's okay, because we're going to ebb, we're going to flow, and life is organic. And we're sometimes going to cut back on some things, and sometimes we're going to move forward with some things. And it's all different times in our lives. And one of the things that my wife reminds me a lot of the time is, a lot of the time as young parents, we don't get that quiet time a lot to reflect and to write down and to get curious. Like at the end of the day, we're just like, okay, right, we survived another day. And we're just decompressing as much as we can. And so I think it's just important that as we're doing that, we see sometimes man, you're investing a lot. And sometimes when you're being moved and when you're being changed, when you're repenting daily and you're becoming a new creature, sometimes that causes us to look and say, man, things are dying, things are falling off, things are not right. But that little sprout comes and you go, oh, this change was good. This change, we're surviving. We're going to grow through this.
It's like the currant bush,
Uh-huh.
right? The story, like, I'm the gardener here,
Mm-hmm.
right? How dare you cut me down? I was about to become this thing. It's like, no. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to do something there. And you're going to bear more fruit than you ever thought possible. I'm the gardener here. Yeah, that's powerful. My plants don't bounce back though, Brian.
No.
I cannot keep up. I'm about to go, and this is so not richest man in town, but the nice plants you're going to see on my doorstep will be fake. All
That's
for
okay.
appearances.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
that's all right. That's all right.
For
It's
now.
just a facade. Nice, shiny facade.
The facade.
All right, Brian. What else you got for us, Brian?
Let's see.
I feel like we're making some progress. I feel like we've addressed a couple of things last week.
I
Maybe
think we're
one
at least
question.
on question 3.
I
At
think
least.
we're
Yeah, I think we did three questions tonight.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow.
So I think we're doing good.
I
Well,
love it.
you just your recommendation just bumped up Ken Robinson. We'll put this in the show notes. Finding Your Element is going to be bumped up to top of the pile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really just inspires me because, you know, President Nelson's talk really spoke to me this conference, but there was another that Elder D. Todd Christofferson gave about belonging. And I think that's really, when we were talking last week, one of the places that I came from my question from last week about how do we hold on to Bailey values in an increasingly Potter world? How do we affect change? How do we try to make the Bailey values, the values that most people share? And we talked about how a lot of people do hold those things, but how do we consolidate those into groups, into systems? That's what I really think is if we are able to create a place of belonging where those things are held dear, then man, the world is going to change. The world is going to be a different place. And that's really what I want for everybody. I want everybody to be able to be in it together, because that's how we really know. Like when we isolate ourselves, when we think, man, I'm the only one going through this, or, you know, I don't belong here, I don't fit in, that's when those rut mindsets start presenting themselves. But when we're in a community and we say something, oh man, well, I stink at this, and we're like, well, it's the first time you tried it, like automatically somebody just deflects that, and that rut doesn't start, because, oh yeah, this is the first time I've tried that. It's okay that I stunk at it this time.
Yeah.
And so I think building communities and building Zion is really what I kind of wanted to move to, because that's really the whole focus and the whole goal. I mean, we are on this journey ourselves, and we hear salvation is an individual matter, but exaltation is a family matter. And I don't know if that necessarily means just our nuclear family, but our extended, our human family.
Yeah.
I really think that those were the points that I really wanted to make, is just how do we open up the circle? How do we open up and be inclusive to wherever anybody's at right now, that those struggling, that those thriving can all be in the same place and all have that understanding and that support and that desire to move things forward and to be connected, instead of breaking into the tribes, instead of breaking into the we think, you think, they think.
Yeah. It's awful.
And just
because the tribe,
yeah.
the tribe is the artificial. It's almost like, war in heaven, ideas presented, this idea of like, hey, everybody together. I can actually, using the tools at my disposal, I could create a world where everyone is together. It's just an echo chamber because it's surrounded by people that think like me, look like me, believe like me, right? I can tweak my Twitters and my Twitter feed and just follow the people that agree with me. I can create some of these
Which
things.
that's sage advice, by the way. You want to go down that road. If you're in the Twitter world, save yourself the heartache and just go down that road.
But I can just tune into the media sources that are going to back up the things that I believe versus, being out in the world and building that true sense of community, that Zion community of one heart, one mind, no poor among them.
It's that whole idea though of just like you be the change you want, right? Like I've spent a lot of time in life waiting on people to change, and it doesn't work that way. You end up being frustrated and irritated and all those other negative emotions, right? You be the change that you want. If you're proactive and you're doing it for the right reasons and you're out there, there's nothing more powerful than saying it's your first time you tried it, man. Don't sweat it. Walking up to someone and putting your arm around them and saying, man, it's good to see you.
It's
Game
just
changers.
like Pops, right? Pops running into.
Absolutely. Bring peace, man.
Yeah.
Right?
And Pops like, hey, how you doing, young man?
Yeah.
The idea behind the richest man in town lifestyle for me is master the intersection.
Yeah.
When you have an opportunity to intersect with someone else, does that person walk away on higher ground? Does that person walk away with an altered trajectory going up? Or are you blowing people's candles out everywhere you go? Right? Like that's the thing. George Bailey didn't understand the impact that he was having, but everywhere he went, he made it better. Yeah. He made people better. He built up people. He collected people. Right. And like that's the building. That's the community building Brian's talking about here.
Yeah. I think, 100%. And I think that I don't think that, I think if we're intentional about that, then we can see the changes happen in front of us. They're clear. I mean, we just have to have our eyes open to recognize those things, and we have to be, I think that part of that idea of community is we have to put ourselves out there, and that doesn't mean that we have to run for city council or be the mayor of Pottersville or whatever, right?
Even this is putting, right?
100%. Like
putting yourself out there.
Just put yourself out there. Like I said, I mean, that example of just putting your arm around somebody or telling someone that it's good, man, I haven't seen you in a long time. Where you been, what you been up to, like being curious and being open and intentional about it and changes everything.
Or put yourself kind of going full circle, raising your hand and saying, you know what? I see things a little differently.
Yeah, 100%.
Can I share with you how I feel? Can I share with you some experiences that I've had where maybe you can look at this differently?
Yeah.
I think one of the really powerful things that can help us in that is to get out of the scripts in our life. We show up and how are you? How was your week? Like, anything cool?
Absolutely.
No? Okay, cool. And we kind of travel log each other, like, or kind of pull out our measuring sticks and say, oh, what'd you do? What'd I do?
Yeah.
And ask questions like the ones we're asking tonight. Like, how do you pull yourself out of a rut when you're in one?
Yeah.
Like, what would that be like if instead of like sitting down next to somebody at church and saying, hey, how are you? How was your week? If you sat down and say, hey, I'm curious.
Yeah.
If you're in a rut when you're struggling, what like helps pull you out of it?
Yeah, totally.
Or like, hey, there's this thing that I really admire about you. Can you tell me, how did you get that?
Mm-hmm.
Who taught it to you? What experience did you have? right? Like, you're right though, because we have these scripts and we have them with God.
Yes.
Let's be real. Our prayers a whole lot of times are following a script. We have them with our spouse, right? This is where I come home and my script says I'm supposed to ask how your day went.
Can I bring something up? I was just listening to a podcast today. Brene Brown and the Gottmans, who are relationship experts, have written a bunch of books, kind of like the relationship Bibles. They've done studies where...
Oh, I thought you were going to say kind of like us.
Kind of, well...
Not really, but it's fine.
But in their studies, they have been able to, with like 90% accuracy, recognize whether a couple is going to make it or not.
Whoa.
Within sitting, just observing how they interact with each other for like a half hour.
Whoa.
Is this unlocking us?
Unlocking us. That's where.
Wow,
the podcast that I was listening to today.
That is a scary skill.
Wait, is this like are they like? Never mind. Just tell you go ahead.
No.
I got all kinds of thoughts.
one of the bombs that they dropped in one of the studies that they had read about was that there are couples who only converse with one another for 35 minutes a week. And that those 35 minutes are all about logistics, are all about scheduling, are all about.
Dude, I've been there. I've been the 35-minute logistic guy.
Uh-huh.
I'm just telling you, I've been that
I'll
guy.
see your 35 and lower you to 30.
And then it says, like, you're in your foxhole, I'm in my foxhole.
Been that guy too.
And what they talk about is you get in the same foxhole and get with each other and recognize each other, show gratitude towards each other, show just curiosity into the other person's life, ask them for things, ask them for your needs. Because one of the things they talk about is, people get upset. Like Brene gave this example where she was like, when I first married my husband, I was so upset for him because on my birthday, I woke up and he didn't do anything. And when I grew up, it was like all surprises, balloons everywhere. Like, we make a big deal of people's birthdays. And they're sitting in couples therapy, and the therapist asks, well, did you tell Steve that that's what you wanted? And she's like, well, no, but if I have to tell him, then this isn't going to work. And it's like, we need to be able to communicate our needs. And that's something that is outside of that logistic conversation and into, hey, this week is really rough for me. Would you fill in the blank, whatever it is?
All right, I just had this conversation with my wife. Yeah, I'm dead serious. I just told her, I said, you and I need to go out of town, like, soon. And she was like, why? We're good. I need change of scenery. I need a change of scenery. I love our house. I love our space. I need to be in a different space, and I need you with me in that space. And, but because I've been that guy who's like both sides, logistics, right? Because you're sort of in that phase of life where it's like your life is run by a calendar, right?
Soccer practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've been there, and then it's just like ships passing in the night. All right, I'll see you. I'm going to drop these 2 kids off tomorrow. I'm with them all day. You're with these other 2 all day. We'll come back for dinner, and then, whatever. So I've been there. But I think that communicating those needs is a big deal, man. Because
I'm
here
nervous.
I am.
I'm nervous.
I'm 25 years in, and I'm just barely doing it. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm nervous about that.
Yeah.
Because let me know how that goes. Let me know how that goes.
What's that? Communicating? The communication.
One of the really interesting points they brought up about it is, it may feel like, oh, well, that's not something I'm supposed to do. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be self-sufficient. I'm not supposed to, like, that's just not proper to ask them to do something for me, but it absolutely is. Yeah. But they say, it's also a trust building thing, because if they know, hey, my spouse is coming to me and asking for something, that means they're putting trust in me. And it's just such a trust building thing. And I think that's what really is something that breaks down a lot. Trust breaks down when we don't have those non-cold, regimented conversations. That's one of the first things to break down when we don't have connection. If we don't have genuine connection, I think the trust naturally just kind of gets brittle and kind of falls 100%. Away.
And you know, you've seen that. I mean, I've seen this in my relationship. Ricky will back me up on all this, right? But there's times where it's like, dude, we are not on the same wavelength. We are not seeing eye to eye. We are not, you know, I am not enjoyable to be around. Like, I can recognize all those things, you know, and I'm like, that's when I'm like, I gotta hit a reset button, and I need you to help me hit that reset button, you know? So yeah, and that's 25 years in the making, man.
Okay. So check this out. I'm not at 25, I'm 24. So I'm right behind trying to catch up.
Yeah.
But
I'll let you catch up. I'll hold time.
24. Yeah. 24. When, let's just hypothetical situation here, gentlemen. Let's say you're not in the habit of communicating needs, and you may not be even you may not even have the muscle developed to identify what you need, because you've never been communicating them. You're never asked what they are. How do you even gauge what it is that you do need?
All right, Mike, let me tell you this. This is a literal conversation I've had before.
All right, talk to me.
Ricky, I'm not happy. Why are you not happy? I don't know. I just don't know.
That's how I see that going.
Right? But I can tell you right now, like, I don't feel right. And I need, you know, help me work through this. You know, and sometimes that's just at the end of the conversation, I'm like, yeah, I feel better. You know? Yeah. And sometimes it's like, you know, Tyler, you need to go get some professional help and talk to somebody, you know?
Yeah.
But either way, but I literally have had that conversation where, you know, and I'll tell you this, like, there's been times in my relationship where I've been afraid to communicate my needs because my fear was that saying those things was going to upset the apple cart somehow.
Yeah. You know or I shouldn't be having these needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You start judging and saying, no, a man should be able to handle the thing you got on your plate. Like figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Again, scripts running in your head.
Which let me tell you this, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. And I'm so guilty of it because I intentionally will seek people out and I will, hey, talk to me. What's going on in your life? What's happening? And we have this really great conversation. They bare their soul and they give me all this, you know, and then they say, oh, how about you, Tyler? I'm like, I'm living the dream. Kind of stupid answer is that?
This is a one-way conversation. Thank you.
Do you know what I mean, though? Like,
and then that other person goes away going, "Oh, cool.
Do I know what you need?
I'm glad I did that."
Book.
Yeah, like I will literally, and in my mind, I'm like, I want to have a conversation with this person because I want to be able to help them. I see, and then, but in my own world, I'm struggling. And I'll
even
like,
raise you one.
I'll handle that myself.
Yeah, I'll be in the conversation while the person is divulging the very thing that you need. And in my mind, I'm nodding my head in agreement.
Right.
That I could easily be having a two-way conversation and letting you in on the very fact that I need the same thing and I'm struggling with the same thing. And then it turns like, how you been, man? It's like, solid.
Yeah. Well, you go back to, and I'll connect this back to the conversation with my wife, right? Because I think for the first part of my marriage, I had this idea in my head that I had to show no cracks, show no fear, show no emotion other than happy. Like, hey, I got to make the room happy, right? And I think that, and I don't know why that is. I mean, it's cultural. It's, it's probably, family stuff, everything else, right? But then I've finally got to the point where, and this is it, like, I trust my wife. And I don't know that I ever really verbalized that or made that like an intentional part of like my, of who I am. Cause now I'll go in there and she probably hates it. Right. But I'm like, hey, can we talk? Cause there's some things that are going on with me that I need to talk to you about. And, and I think it's impacting us.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm not feeling as connected to you as I should, as I want to. And so I got to figure this out. And I can't figure this out by me sitting down on the couch at midnight with SportsCenter on in the background and you up in bed.
Yeah. So here's the crazy wild thing that actually kind of comes full circle, right? Like, you're not bad, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I've felt the same things in my marriage at times, and I'm calling it trustworthy. Like, I need to show that there are no cracks so that people can trust me that I have my stuff together and they can put their lives in my wheelbarrow. And the very fact is, when I hold my stuff back, I'm sending a message that I don't trust you with my stuff.
100%. I mean, think of,
and
I can just
all
think
of
of
that
like
stemming from an incorrect idea of what trust is.
Dude, totally. Because like I just had a conversation last night with my 13-year-old. She was talking about some stuff that she's dealing with at school, and we were having this conversation. And I said, let me tell you about a couple things that I experienced at your age. It's like, we can be honest here. I can have this conversation. I can share these things. And at the end of that,
did you tell her to put on like the black and white filter, black and white video filter?
But at the end of that conversation, it was definitely a different level of understanding of like, oh, well, my dad's not just telling me how to solve my problem. He's telling me he dealt with this problem and he didn't really know how to solve it himself, but in hindsight, looking back on it, I can see that these are some things I probably could have done.
And she didn't walk away thinking any less of dad because he had problems.
I mean, I haven't read.
The opposite often happens more so, that when you are able to have that people go, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that person like understands something, and they look at you in a more favorable light even.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't read her social media since we had that conversation. So it could be whatever she's putting out there about me could be totally different. But no, I agree with you, Brian. I think that like that's, and to my, just to that point of like, I think that there's some honesty and some things that I need to be willing to offer to people, right? Because relationships are, like I said, I'll seek that person out. We'll have a conversation, and I'm loving what they're saying, and we're pouring into each other. But then they're like, "What about you, Tyler? What's going on?" And I'm like, "We are good," And I'm like, "It's such a
so
crock.
I'm gonna come. I'm gonna come jumping out of this episode with Brian Grow, and I'm gonna go running up to Kelly Freeman and be like, let's get away. Let's go to IHOP and have pancakes in the middle of the night and just talk about our needs.
You can do that.
She's going to be like,
Mister.
and she's going to be like, no more podcasting for you.
Oh no. You say, but I need it.
I need
that's my need.
And Tyler taught me that these magic words are all I got to do is communicate and say I need it, and it's going to happen.
Oh no, I never said it's going to happen,
but hey, the interesting thing is when you put that out there, and if they think, no, I can't do that, then you get to have the conversation and you get to say, well, this is why I think I need it. And you get to get curious more about each other's lives. And even the things that we disagree about, I want this. No, I don't want that. well, tell me why you want it, or tell me why you don't want it. And then you start to get to deeper and deeper levels of intimacy, and deeper levels of like understanding and trusting. And you see that person's experience, you see their perspective and where they're coming from. I'm really grateful that you guys share that. I'm sure that isn't things that happened recently. This is probably all your first decade of marriage, and now you've got it figured out. But
first 6 months,
I
it's
think
been
it's funny,
24
Brian,
and a half years of pure bliss.
I actually feel like I owe you money right now, because I feel like I feel like that conversation was very therapeutic, and especially that last run of questions and the conversation that led to. I thought that was pretty powerful, man. I appreciate it.
Well, I got to tell you, let me just say this because I did this conversation that I just recently had, Brian. I will confess, this was a very recent conversation, not the first 6 months of my marriage. And I said, I got to get away. Like, I need a change of scenery. We need to get away for a weekend.
Freemans are coming for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I got to get out of here.
Mentally prep ourselves for that. Like, that's going to be crazy. And she was not receptive to that. She was just like, why? We're busy. We have all this stuff going on. And I was just like, I don't know, this is how I'm feeling. And we kind of went back and forth, and then we just left it. Like, it was just like a unresolved, like, okay, well, this is how I feel. That's how you feel. Thank you very much. And we kind of, whatever. But my wife comes back to me a few days later, and she's like, all right, listen, I've been thinking about, and this is what I love about my wife in particular, is that she has this ability to really not just dismiss things out of hand, right? She's like, I've been thinking about what you were saying, and here's where I'm going to come from. I'm going to approach it at this spot. And so I appreciate that, right? Because we want to be heard, and we want to, if nothing else, we just want to feel like I have this space that I can say what I have to say. And quite frankly, it's okay if she was like, look, the Freemans are coming. We have to buy turkey to feed 50 people. We cannot go out of town.
But I think too, it kind of gets into process over results.
Yeah.
Sometimes the relationship's going to be stronger just by going through that process.
I totally agree.
Not even less necessarily like, hey, keep score, who got what, who got their way, right? 100%. It's like, no, like that process refined us.
Yeah, the best part of that conversation was the conversation.
Yep.
Right? The exchange of thoughts and ideas. And then I'm letting you in, you're letting me in. Yeah. And I feel more connected, and I just feel like, whatever, I'm good with where we are, but based on a conversation actually happening.
The thing that I'm learning right now, and maybe it hasn't been said verbally or specifically, but I think I'm learning that if I'm getting tossed to and fro, it's arrogant of me to think that it's not giving her whiplash. It's not also influencing the things that are going on with her. So no matter how much I try to cover it up, no matter how much I try to put on the brave face, no matter how much I try to do it on my own,
you're hitched.
We're hitched, and in a very literal sense, no matter what, the effect that it's having on them deserves me taking the time to get vulnerable, to get connected, to build on this thing that isn't just a earthly experience, that isn't just a human experience. This connection that is something that, God willing, will last for time and all eternity.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, and probably one of the things that has kept me in a rut was not being able to open up to the person that has been with me for the last decade, that knows things, that can point things out, they can help me bat down the negative self-talk, can help me out of the rut and into a groove that we can.
It's funny. Yeah, Brian, it's funny. I've actually had, my wife is very honest with me. So I've had moments where she said, you know what, I'm not loving who you are right this second. And then
I think I've actually seen her say that.
I'm sure you have. And she's followed it up with this, she's followed up with this. And I haven't liked it for the last couple months. You haven't been right. And I remember telling her, are you serious? Like, I feel like I've been in a pretty good spot. And so I loved that. Like, but I did like internalize that feedback, you know. And what made me think about that, Brian, was your comment about you being tossed to and fro and everyone getting whiplash, you know?
Yeah. Who are you fooling?
Yeah. And so I'm appreciative of people that are willing to say, hey, something's not right, you know, whether that's you guys or my wife or anybody, right, that's willing to say, hey, Tyler, like, what's not right? Because at this point in my life, if you tell me that, I'm going to be like, okay, ready? Here's where I'm at, you know.
Except when coworkers tell me I don't look good, I need a COVID test.
Yeah, then I'm like, I'll see you in a week, man. I got that COVID vacay coming.
Good stuff. Hey, Brian Grow, I want you to know something right now. This conversation is going to land all over the world. We recently hit the charts, not just in Tanzania, Tyler Gould. Are you ready for this? We are number 7 on the parenting charts for the beautiful country of Sierra Leone.
Welcome,
number
welcome
7
Sierra Leone.
with a bullet, man. We are moving up. Come on.
So Sierra Leone, we appreciate you tuning in to the richest man in town and catching up with our friend Brian Grow.
I think Sierra Leone borders Tanzania, does it not? I
couldn't place it on a map.
I don't even know. I thought Sierra Leone was a restaurant down in Chula.
And we're number 15 now.
Oh man.
That's funny. Well, I got to tell you, once again, selfishly, this has been a great night for me. I feel like I've got something out of it, but I appreciate you guys a lot. I got to tell you that.
I appreciate it too. I love this. I think this is the greatest thing, to just be able to get on and talk in a long podcast format, because that's what I need a lot of the time. It's a lot. It's a lot of work, and there's so many things that we could go to from here to how do we recognize our blind spots? How do we receive that feedback, and how do we make it not personal? How do we, you know, those are so many conversations that I need to get my sleeves rolled up on and get into the nitty gritty with, and get really specific on how to do those things. So,
well, we'll bring you back,
guys.
but notice savvy veteran podcast host move is we get really personal and talk about our own marital relations 2 hours in to the podcast, so that Ricky Gould and Kelly Freeman won't ever hear this audio.
My wife fades out after minute 3. She's like, I've heard enough of you.
Is buried. Oh, Mike and Tyler get really vulnerable with Brian at minute 120.
185.
So this isn't going to be a clip that you guys snippet that part of it.
No.
Put online. No.
There's vulnerable, and then there's just stupid.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah.
Hey,
well,
I'm a big fan of that idea of, you know, putting a pin in Brian Grow and bringing him back from time to time.
I love it.
Yep.
Make me a regular.
Let's
do
I
this.
love this.
Let's do this. We will. In fact, I'm probably being replaced. Is that what's happening right now, Tyler?
At least for a few weeks. I don't know.
There's
it's a trial run.
There's a different text thread that you're not privy to.
Yes,
Right.
It's the back channel.
Well, let's definitely put a pin in it. We appreciate you, Brian. I mean, I love the conversations. I love the insight that you give, and And again, I mean, I joke that it's selfish, but I do feel a little selfish because I do walk out of here with some things that I can implement now, you know, that I need to readdress now. And I appreciate that. So
guilt and shame create the water. No, guilt and shame are the water that creates the rut.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And I believe it to be true. From my own experience, that's lining up pretty dang well with some of the things that I've battled and are battling. So I appreciate the insight, appreciate the questions, appreciate you putting us, you know, turning the tables and putting us on the hot seat to you know, fire back some answers and some you know, I don't know. I
knew it.
I'm hoping that there was some I'm hoping that there was some worth coming out of our mouths. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it was good. There was some noise and maybe a little bit of wisdom every once in a while, right? So it's good.
Oh, blind squirrel.
A broken clock. Brian, we appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. And again, tell your family once again that we apologize for stealing you, but it was worth it for Mike and I for sure.
Oh, they love this. They're okay with me getting therapy from you guys too.
Okay, good.
Makes us all better. That's the key.
Absolutely.
All right, Brian, have a good night. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.